بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We're now moving on to lesson number 5, talking about the subject باب فرائض الغسل وسننه وفضائله. We are going to talk about the issues that are obligatory and sunnah and virtuous in regards to performing ghusl. And when we're talking about ghusl, we're referring to the ritual full body washing that one does either when they enter into the state of janaba, and janaba is the state that a person enters into after having sexual intercourse, or to be more accurate, either by ejaculation of sperm or by the head of the penis entering past the lips of the midsection of a female. Then this would necessitate on both male and female the obligation to make what we call al-Ghusl, which we can consider the complete body washing, washing of the body, as we will mention later, or the other things that necessitate al-Ghusl is exiting the state of menstruation. So either exiting the state of menstruation for women and sexual intercourse, or, as we mentioned, to be more accurate, the ejaculation of sperm, or the head of the penis entering into the vagina of a woman past the clitoris. I need to be specific. And these are the things that necessitate al-Ghusl. So what he's going to talk about here is he's going to keep it basic. He's just going to talk about the obligatory acts, the sunnah acts, and the virtuous acts. And just as a reminder, when he's referring to the fara'id, the obligatory acts, he's referring to those things that have to be done in order for the act to be sound. Meaning the things that we mentioned from the fara'id, if they are not done, then the action is not sound. When he mentions the sunnah acts, he's referring to those things which the Sharia has requested strongly and recommended strongly. And when he's referring to the fada'il, the virtuous acts, the Sharia has requested but not as strong as the sunnah acts. And so he goes on to mention the first ones, فَأَمَّا فَرَائِدُهُ فَخَمْسَةٌ. Yani, in terms of the obligatory acts, they are 5. The first one he mentions an-niyyatu, and the niyyatu here means intention, and the intention that a person should have is the niyyah to remove the state of what we call hadath al-akbar, or hadath al-akbar, to remove the state of janaba for those who are who obtained a ghusl from having some type of sexual activity that we mentioned previously. Or one can just have the simple intention, which is easier because it includes everybody, the intention of performing a ghusl that's obligatory. Then that would be considered sufficient. So the first one he mentions is an-niyyatu. Then he mentions what ta'mimul jasadi bil ma'. This one is important. But before we go on, I would like to add another point to the issue of the niyyah. The niyyah should be done at the beginning of the ghusl, and we'll give a little bit of details about that later on. So he mentions, he goes on to mention the second one, with ta'mimul jasadi bil ma'. Ta'mimul jasadi bil ma' means that all of the body has to be washed. All of the outside of the body has to be washed with water. So meaning that all of the body, water has to reach all of the body. And so when we're making a ghusl, we have to look out to make sure that our armpits get washed, that the crotch under the legs gets washed, the belly button gets washed. For those who are not circumcised, inside this area of the circumcision has to be washed. Everything on the outside of the body has to be wet, even including the apparent part of the lips, meaning that you cannot tuck your lips in and wash your face during ghusl because you wouldn't have a ghusl. Also, you do not wipe the ears in the ghusl. The ears have to be washed. So the best way to wash your ears so that no water falls into your ear is that when you're washing the right ear, just tilt your head to the right and take a cup of water and just rub the water in your ears so that the water automatically falls downwards and not into your ears. So everything considered the outside of the body must be touched by water. That's what he means by وَتَعْمِيمُ الْجَسَدِ بِالْمَاءِ. Then he mentions after that, which is also an important aspect which is related to this, وَدَلْكُ جَمِيعِ الْجَسَدِ. دَلْكُ جَمِيعِ الْجَسَدِ means that all of the body must be rubbed. Meaning by using your hand to, you can't just pour water on your body and say, I have a ghusl. Additional to that, the water being all over your body, you must use your hands or any other part of the body to wipe every part of the body. So when you put the water on your body, it has to be moved around. So you have to make sure that all of your body is rubbed. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the section of wudu, when we talk about the issue of dalk, we said that in wudu, you have to use the inside palm of your hand. But in ghusl, technically speaking, it doesn't have to be done with the inside palm of your hand. So when it comes to washing the back, then you can use your arm. Or you could even use your 2 feet to wash each foot. So in terms of ghusl, it's not a condition that you use the inside palm of your hand in order to wipe. Or in order to wipe down the body. So a person has to make sure that all parts of the bodies are wiped. Behind the ears, under the armpits, under the crotch, all the places that we mentioned before, the belly button, when a person is making ghusl, and this is obligatory. One of the things that I always stress, one of the disliked things in ghusl is using excessive water. And what do they mean by using excessive water? Using excessive water on your body when making ghusl. So unfortunately now people have the customs of taking showers when they're making ghusl, so that the ghusl that they're making throughout their whole life is disliked according to the Sharia, because Allah la yuhibbul musrifin. Allah doesn't like when people using things excessively without any reason. So the best way to make ghusl is to use a bucket, meaning to fill up a bucket of water and scoop your hands inside the bucket and take the water, for example, put it on your chest, wash down your chest. Put it on your legs, wash down your legs. Put the water on your arm, wash down your arms until your ghusl is done. When it's done, then you can wash with soap any way you want to. But when a person is making the ghusl, since it's a type of form of ibadah, then it is mustahab, as mentioned in the books of fiqh, to use the least amount of water possible when making a ghusl. So that's one way you can make a ghusl. Another way you can make a ghusl is if you turn the shower on, stand under the water for a couple seconds, then turn it off, and then use that. Since your body's wet now, just take your hands and wipe down your whole body, and you have a ghusl. Or just turn on the tap in the bathtub, put your hands under it, and take the water from it and put it on your body until all of your body is covered in ghusl. So everything must be covered in ghusl. A point for women, which is very important, and it goes as well for wudu: nail polish cannot be worn when making wudu, nor when performing ghusl. Nail polish has to be removed, no questions asked. Same with makeup. If makeup is a means so that the water doesn't get to your face, as I've been told that Muslim women are starting to wear waterproof makeup for the sake that when they make wudu, then the water doesn't actually touch their face because it will repel the water, is absolutely is absolutely problematic, because the water has to reach the face, and if it's not reaching the face, then you do not have wudu or ghusl. So that's one of the, as I mentioned, that's a way that you can perform a ghusl properly. So he says, وَدَلْكُ الْجَمِيعِ الْجَسَدِ, as we just mentioned, which is the wiping down of the whole body. وَالْفَوْرِ. Wal-fawr means, as you mentioned before, it's the same as in wudu, that you do the ghusl all in one shot, so that you complete it before any of the limbs dry. And just to strike an example, as we did before, an example of that would be if you started your ghusl, for example, and the phone rang, and you went and you answered the phone. Technically speaking, if you hung up the phone and your limbs were still dry, your limbs were still wet, you could go back and complete your wudu, because you would still be considered doing your ghusl in continuously. And as we mentioned here, al-fawr, continuously, is a condition for the soundness of a person's ghusl. So what we mean by continuous is a technical term, meaning that you complete your ghusl before the other limbs dry. So if you were to hang up the phone and your limbs were dry, then you would have to start your ghusl all over again. Then he mentions the last one. So the first one we have an-niyya, which intention. The second one is that water reaches all parts of the body. The third one is that you wipe down the whole body with water, or using any limb of the body. The fourth one is that you do it continuously. And the fifth one is called takhlil al-sha'r. Takhlil al-sha'r means that you run your fingers through any hair on the body, so that water gets down to the skin. Even the beard, whether it's thick or thin, and all the hair on your head, you have to make sure that you run your fingers through your scalp, so that water gets down to all parts of the body. Your eyebrows, you have to make sure that you rub your eyebrows, so that water gets down to the eyebrows. And so that's what they mean by takhlil al-sha'r. Takhlil al-sha'r basically means to run your fingers through your hair, the hairy parts of the body. So those are the obligatory acts which he said were 5. Then he's going to move on to mention 4 sunnah acts. He says, وَأَمَّا سُنَنُهُ فَأَرْبَعَةٌ. Therefore, غَسْلُ يَدَيْهِ أَوَّلًا إِلَى كُوعَيْهِ. That he should wash his hands before placing them, to wash his hands before he begins his ghusl. So wash his hands, and the way he should do it is wash his right hand 3 times, wash his left hand 3 times, up to his wrist, with the intention of doing an ibadah. Because we're not washing the hands for the sake of cleanliness. The issue here is not whether the hands are clean or not. It's the sunnah, and so it's something the Prophet ﷺ did, so we don't exactly know why he would wash them even if they were clean. So it's considered a form of worship, and so we do it with the sake of ibadah. And so that's a ghasl yadayhi awwalan, the first time, ila ku'ayhi, up into his wrist bones. Wal madmadatu wal istinshaqu. Wal madmadatu, as we mentioned before, to wash out the mouth. And during wudu we mentioned the conditions of washing the mouth, and so washing in order to obtain the sunnah. And so to obtain the sunnah and ghusl, the same rules apply. So review this issue. Wal istinshaqu means to, as we mentioned, to blow the water out of the nose. But pay attention here. Outside of the chapter of wudu, when they use the word istinshaq, which means to inhale the water, they do not mention al-istinthar, blowing the water out. Because outside of the chapter of wudu, when they say al-istinshaq, when they say istinshaq, which is blowing the water in the nose, they also mean istinthar, blowing it out of the nose. So istinshaq outside of the chapter of wudu, since like the issue here, because we're in the section of ghusl, means both the blowing in and the blowing out of the water are all considered a sunnah. But don't forget, as you mentioned before, that there's conditions in order to obtain the sunnah. So go back and review, because the same thing that relates to this as well as madmada in terms of obtaining the sunnah is the same as in wudu. Then he mentions وَمَسْحُ سِمَاخُ الْأُذُنَيْنِ, to wipe the flaps, the inside air canal of the ear. Now pay attention that he says here mesh. Mesh here means wiping. The difference between wiping and washing is washing, you're going to take actual scoops of water and use that to wash the body. Whereas when you're wiping, as you don't take water up. So you put your hands in a bucket and you pull them out with no water. So what you're going to do when you're wiping the ear canals, and not deep in the ear canals, just the inner hole, a little bit on the inner hole, you just dip your 2 index fingers in the water, pull them out, just put them on the inside a little bit and just turn them back and forth a little. That's what he means by وَمَسْحُ السِّمَاخُ الْأُذُنَيْنِ. So those are the 5 sunnahs, the 4 sunnahs that he mentions. Washing the hands first, then washing the mouth, then doing the nose, then wiping the ears. Then he's going to move on to وَأَمَّا فَضَائِلُهُ فَسِتَّةٌ. As for the fada'il, he's going to mention sittatun 6. Al-bad'u bi-izālat al-adhā an jasadihi. That for a person who has impurities, for example, a woman who's finished menses, or for a male and female after sexual intercourse, they might have some impurities on their bodies. It's mustahab to remove those impurities, right? To remove those impurities first. So technically speaking, in order to obtain this rule, there's a simple thing that a person can follow. Before they start their ghusl, then they should just wash the private part section between their knees and their navel, in between the crotch, and that way they if there's any impurities, they will have removed the impurities and gain the reward of doing a fadila. So that's what he means by starting bi-izalat al-adha. Adha here means najis, an impurity. So for women who are finished menses, they might have some impurity of blood, and in terms of intercourse, there will be impurities of sperm or any other liquids coming out during intercourse. So that's what he means by bi-izalat al-adha an jasadihi, from his body. So meaning that what a person's going to do is he's going to wash his hands, and when he washes his hands, then he's going to start by removing the impurities. Or actually, my bad, he's going to remove the impurities first, before he starts his ghusl, then start washing the hands. Then he says, ثُمَّ إِكْمَالُ أَعْضَاءِ وُضُوئِهِ. Pay attention here, he says, then after he finishes removing the impurities and then washing his hands, he should complete washing his limbs of wudu. What he means here is that the limbs that you should wash first, after you wash your hands, start washing the limbs that you do in wudu, which means your face, your arms, your head, and your feet. Wash those areas first. And the reason why the ulama say that they should be washed is because they are musharraf. They are the honorable limbs of a human being. And the reason why they say that they're honorable, because these are the limbs which Allah Azza wa Jal has ordered us to wash before meeting with Him in prayer. And so we start with them first, because what is more honorable is better to start with. So we start with the limbs, washing the limbs of wudu first, which means you're gonna do your face, you're gonna do your arms, you're gonna do your head. But obviously here, when I mean you're going to do your head, you're going to wash it, not wipe it. Wash your feet, and then after you finish that, he moves on to the next one. وَغَسْلُ أَعَالِ قَبْلَ الْأَسَافِلِ. Then he's going to wash a'ali, the high parts of the body, قَبْلَ الْأَسَافِلِ, before the lower parts of the body. Meaning that after you finish washing those limbs of wudu, you're going to start washing from the top down to the bottom. Because if you wash the top down to the bottom, any type of dirt or anything that you might have in your body will be pushed down. So you start from the top. Going down. He's also going to mention later on, just to add this point so everything works, is mentioned together. Starting from the right side down. Starting from the right side than the left side. Meaning that, as we mentioned, we're going to start from the top, but you're going to wash the whole right side first. And the whole right side from the head all the way down to the feet of the right side. When you're done that, then you're going to wash the left side all the way down to the feet of the left side. So that's why he mentions وَغَسْلُ الْأَعَالِي قَبْلَ الْأَسَافِلِ, and then he's going to mention وَتَثْلِيثُ الرَّأْسِ بِالْغَسْلِ. Also he's going to mention that when you wash your head, wash it 3 times. And the reason why they say wash it 3 times is to make sure that you reach the scalp. So if you have a bald head, then this might not be the issue. But if you have hair on your head, especially for women, washing it 3 times is recommended in order to make sure that all of the hair gets wet and that you can get to the scalp of your head. So that's what he means by وَتَثْلِيثُ الرَّأْسِ بِالْغَسْلِ. And then he mentions وَالْبَدْءُ, beginning بِالْمَيَامِن, the right side, قَبْلَ الْمَيَاسِرِ, beginning with the right side before the left side. And I mentioned to you already previously what that meant. Then he mentions also something that I talked about before, وَقِلَّةُ الْمَاءِ, using the least amount of water as possible. وَلَكِن, but مَعَ إِحْكَامِ الْغَسْلِ. He says مَعَ إِحْكَامِ الْغَسْلِ. Pay attention to this point. Although it's recommended to use a little bit of water, you use a little bit of water. وَلَكِن مَعَ الْإِحْكَامِ. Ihkam means itqan, and itqan means yani making sure that you do something with perfection. So don't use only a little bit of water to the point that you're wiping and you're not washing, or that you're missing a couple areas. Use a little bit of water, but also use enough that you can get the job done properly. So that's what he means by ihkam al-ghasli, getting the ghusl, the washing, done properly. Right? So that's the end of the section about ghusl, and I'll touch upon a few points before we close this session. For those who know Arabic, understand the difference between al-ghuslu with a dhamma, and al-ghasli with a fatha. When we say al-ghuslu with a dhamma, we are referring to the technical term of the washing that we do as a form of worship, al-ghuslu. So ghuslu means to perform the ritual washing. When we use the word ghasl with the fatha, we're referring to just washing. That's why you notice when he says babu fara'idul ghusli wa sunanihi wa fada'ilihi, here we're talking about the obligatory acts of the actual ritual action of ghusl. But if you look during when we're talking about the fada'il, he says وَغَسْلُ الْأَعَالِ قَبْلَ الْأَسَافِلِ, and he uses a ghaslu, because when he says غَسْلُ أَعَالِ قَبْلَ الْأَسَافِلِ, he means washing the whole right side. So he's not going to say ghusl, because when he says ghasl a'ali, when he says washing, he's talking about just a normal state of washing. So distinguish between the word ghasl wa ghuslu. So before we close as well, in order for a person to make a practical ghusl, what he's going to do is he's going to enter the place where he's making ghusl. He's going to start removing the impurities. He's going to remove all impurities. So I say in general, to wash between the knees and the navel, and inside the crotch area. Then he's going to start washing his hands 3 times. His right side, then his left side. Then he's going to start washing the limbs of wudu. And after time that he starts washing the limbs of wudu, this is the first obligatory act, and this is where the niyyah should take place. Right? Because the washing of the hands is sunnah, and that washing of the hands is before ghusl. It is not part of the ghusl. So after you finish washing your hands, the next part that you start washing, you've now started to do the obligatory act of ghusl. So that's where you should have the niyyah of either entering into the state of purity, or removing the state of the greater impurity, or the intention of doing the obligatory act of ghusl. Now, a side point here that's important for men, and it doesn't include women, which wasn't mentioned in the text but is mentioned in other texts, that it's mustahab for the man to start washing his body from his private parts after he finishes washing his hand, namely his front private part, because if he touches it afterwards, after he starts his ghusl, then his wudu will become broken, and he'll have to make another wudu after he's done his ghusl. Because in our madhab, if you make a ghusl and you don't touch your private part, it's sufficient to make wudu. But if you start making your ghusl, like you start washing your chest first and then you touch your private part, then after your ghusl, you're going to have to make another wudu. So for men, something a little different. After you start washing your hands, wash your private parts. Wash your private part, meaning the front private part first, and then go back to the normal, and then carry on your ghusl as normal. And what we mentioned is that after you finish that, then you're going to wash the limbs of, you're going to wash the, before I jump the gun, after you wash your hands, then you should wash your mouth and wash your nose, meaning to do the sunnah acts as you would do them in wudu. So you're going to wash your hands, and then you're going to do the sunnah acts, which is washing the mouth and washing the nose. And then you're going to, if you're a male, you're going to wash the private part. If you're not a male, then that part doesn't concern you. And then after that, you're going to wash the obligatory limbs in wudu. And we mentioned the reason for that is because washing the limbs of wudu is, first, because they're honorable. After you finish that, then you're going to complete the rest of your ghusl from the right side of the body all the way down to the feet, from the left side of the bottom, then move to the left side of the body, all the way from the top all the way down to the bottom, and your ghusl is complete. Don't forget to wash your belly button and all those crevices of the body. Do not tuck your lips in when you're making ghusl. Make sure that your lips are out. Don't forget to make takhleel of the sha'r, meaning to run your fingers for those who have lots of hair on their chest, or those who have lots of hair on their head. And all of us, in terms of the eyebrows and so on and so forth, must be washed. Also, do not forget to make sure that all of the body parts have to be wiped over with a limb as well as being washed. And that is the summary on the issue of ghusl. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een.